Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect, and this is a really fun matchup here. We've actually got two tribal decks in Legacy. Elves, of course, a staple of the format, one of the stronger decks in the game. You've got Acceleration in form of Gaia's Cradle. You have Card Drawing Engine with Elvish Visionary. You have tutor effects in Green Sun Zenith and Tinker effects with Natural Order. I mean, it's really a powerful deck. Certainly deserves its place in the meta, but Wizards, on the other hand, not really well known here. We're going to see cards like Snapcaster. Well, let's just see. There's a bunch of Wizards. There are actually a few cards that you might forget are Wizards as well that can make their way into this list. And Wizard Lightning, as it turns out, is quite strong versus Chalice. Brian had previously beaten a mono red deck that had kind of assumed the game was locked out due to Chalices, and they would have needed a Chalice at 3 to stop that Wizard Lightning, which mopped things up. So Chain Lightning on Brian's side, taking out Nettle Sentinel, got a Dryad Arbor, which is not going to be able to pay for the days. So Brian keeping the board clear so far in game one, except for that Dryad Arbor, which is difficult to stop from coming in. Quirion Ranger and Heritage Druid. Now that Horizon Canopy, a little bit punishing here in that it cannot enable acceleration. If that was a standard forest, then Dryad Arbor could be untapped with the Quirion Ranger. But the fact that it is not a forest means Quirion Ranger could return Dryad Arbor, and then we wouldn't have a useful elf to untap. And that is a wizard that I don't know the name of. When you play a spell, it gives all your wizards +1/+1 until end of turn. It has flying and haste as well. You can let me know in the comments what the name of that card is. But that is probably enough information for a judge to tell you what the actual name is. And there's Birchlore Rangers coming down. So Heritage Druid getting 3 elves on board, including itself. 1 green floating into Elvish Visionary. And those 2 Nettle Sentinels that have expired would be very useful here. Scavenging Ooze. And now that Force of Will on Llanowar Elves feeling bad. That Skoo's very large and looks to punish any further removal on any of these elves. They're just going to grow the Scavenging Ooze and gain a bunch of life. No wizards to tag along here. And Brian's deck not looking as tribal as it needs to compared to this green beatdown. And that is an awful lot of mana there. What do we got? 7 mana off of Cradle. 8. And Hardcast Craterhoof, a Spellstutter Sprite, which is a wizard and a fairy coming down, but that is not going to actually matter. He does not have 8 wizards, fairies in play. So Craterhoof taking down game 1. The hard way, not how Elves necessarily wants to do it, but it certainly can easily produce that much mana. A little bit more common to eat actually Green Sun Zenith for the Craterhoof, and that actually costs an additional mana because you have to pay the green and X. But that is a line that takes place pretty frequently. Of course, Natural Order is the preferred way to go get that Craterhoof. It is much lower to the ground and can happen as soon as, well, turn 2 theoretically, turn 3 much more common. A lot of things have to go right on turn 2, but it is actually possible with the deck. I've done that many times. See what Brian's able to do with the sideboard. Brian almost certainly in the case where he's going to be more prepared for his opponent's decks than they will be for his. That's the nice thing about playing a brew in Legacy, is your opponents are not going to have the experience and are not going to be certain about your 75. There's a lot of potential cards that can go in there. Offhand, Grim Lavamancer could be very interesting versus elves as long as he can fuel the graveyard enough. Being able to take down an elf a turn could be very solid when combined with counter magic and additional removal. Could really make sure that those elves don't get out of hand. We see a fistful of counter magic so far. It looks like we've got Force of Will right at the front of the hand. Brian fetching into Volcanic Island. And starting out with the Ponder. And it looks like Fire Ice. Have not seen that card in a while. And he's going to say no thank you to a potential 2-for-1 on elves. He's going to try and be a little bit more aggressive. Fire Ice was a card I played quite a lot in Vintage back in the day, if you can believe that. It was very good at taking care of cards like Goblin Welder. Fetching a basic forest into Green Sun Zenith, that gets dazed. So the first reasonable hand that we've seen in a little bit out of elves here. You really do want acceleration on turn 1, but that was stifled. Elvish Visionary coming down. And Brainstorm for Brian with that Polluted Delta, best combo in the game. Fetching away those 2 cards. So we've seen Ancestral Recall, speed, and efficiency out of Brainstorm there. Finding the 3 best cards out of the top of the deck and the hand combined. Of course, you do need to get rid of your 2 worst, but sometimes that can actually be to your benefit. Elvish Visionary crashing in. In the days of Flash, Brainstorm was actually preferable to Ancestral and Vintage, just given that you could put back the combo pieces that would need to be fetched out of the deck. Elves, for example, would love it if it could run Brainstorm. That would allow you to run a Singleton Craterhoof and be able to just shuffle it back in. Crop rotation here, not a lot that it can get. Horizon Canopy, the most likely choice here. There's not a lot of elves on board. Guy's Cradle, definitely another option. The Cradle would tap for 2 if this fetches a Dryad Arbor. And it does. But that Horizon Canopy, the call, essentially just going a very long way around, creating that crop rotation for a random card off the top. 2 mana on board. And going the long way around here. Ooh, Snapcaster Mage. Fetching. So Brian choosing not to trade Snapcaster for one of the threats on board. Not the best blocker, but it would take out one of these threats. Of course, creatures on board for elves are a bit more than just 1/1 attackers. They do team up to really charge up Gaia's Cradle, which often is the bigger threat, is the huge mana advantage that a Cradle or possibly 2 can give you. Of course, you can have Cradle out and then play another one from hand. And now we see why Brian not trading off that Snapcaster. He has the Fire Ice to mop both of them up. And 2 damage coming in from Snapcaster means that Elves is now in a very bad spot. Could have Ambush blocked with that Dryad Arbor. But Elves is going to need to carry out its own plan here. Playing defense not going to be good enough. And there's a Cradle. Just a worse than a basic forest at this point. But it does have a lot more potential. 5 damage. Making this a 2-turn clock at best. Chain Lightning coming in, and it looks like a Lightning Bolt in hand, so we've just got 1 turn here. Elves not really going to be able to play out of this. Glimpse of Nature. And it looks like no elves in hand. This is just a test. Force of Will from Brian. And he is going to be able to mop up here. Just throwing that Glimpse out, essentially mandating Brian force it or potentially lose. That is one of the beautiful things about Glimpse of Nature in this deck. Brian picking up the check mark there for game 2, going into game 3. Glimpse of Nature, such a massive threat at only 1 green mana, is of course great when it wins you the game, but it's also great just to throw out there as a piece of bait that has to get countered. Sometimes you can do it even when you don't have enough follow-up. You could be sitting on a hand with Glimpse of Nature and some natural orders, and it's a really dangerous proposition to let that glimpse resolve. They don't know that you don't have the elves. Of course, with Gitaxian Probe leaving the format, those type of bluffing opportunities going to be a lot more common. That would certainly be a silver lining to me in terms of the bannings. That playmat that you see Brian with right there, that is for the Legacy Championship this weekend at Scholars Games. Going to be giving a play set of Force of Will to first place or the credit equivalent, whatever you want. That's a guaranteed prize, and it's going to just ramp up from there based off of attendance. Brian showing why he may choose to get the alternative and credit there. Already has his Force of Wills. Of course, Force is the type of card that it doesn't hurt to have an extra play set of. Very often, you'll end up with multiple decks that run Force of Will. It does fit into so many different styles of play. For example, I have Sneak and Show built right now. And Brian accidentally drew an extra card. And just going to let him shuffle that in. Not actually how that's supposed to work, but see if we can get a good match out of this. Mulling to Oblivion, not the best thing for the stream. And a Wirewood Symbiote off the first land here, which is a basic forest. And that does draw removal. Very much like a flag bearer there. Elvish Visionary drawing a card. You really have to target the symbiote first. Of course, any elves that come down with a symbiote in play are going to be able to be rescued by removal, from removal by the symbiote. This wizard deck seems to have plenty of burn. We've seen Fire Ice, Chain Lightning, and Lightning Bolt. Does enough damage to actually finish off an opponent without even playing any of those wizards. Of course, we've seen Wizards Lightning as well. So that is just a ton of burn. This deck very similar in some ways to Blue-Red Delver, but a bit more top-heavy with its threats. Horizon Canopy being sacked to draw a card. And Snapcaster going to come in. And we see 3 Volcanics here. No shortage of duels here from Brian. Lightning Bolt taking out that Dryad Arbor, denying mana. And another Brainstorm fetch land from Brian, really able to sculpt his hand. Really, the only criticism I have of Elves is the inability to run Brainstorm. It has everything else that you really want out of a deck. It's got mana acceleration, card advantage, tutoring. It just comes in an unconventional package. Ponder here from Brian. And we are in a little bit of a slap fest here. Fetching up Dryad Arbor, and now it's a question of blocking or not. Looks like 4 cards in hand for Brian. No block, taking the damage. And Snapcaster coming down for Brian. And this time grabbing a basic mountain. Basic mountain, one of them less often played basics out of blue decks. Very often the basics biggest function is going to be to function under Blood Moon. Of course, mountain, a little redundant there. Wasteland, the only card that the mountain really plays around. And Brian in very good shape here. Ponder keeping it. And that may spell the end here for Elves. With the amount of mana that he has. Brainstorm for Brian. We see Force of Will. Force of Will blue card here being considered. And it's actually going to be Flusterstorm. Of course, we know the other two are force blue cards, so that is bad news. Punished there. Flusterstorm. Of course, the Glimpse was actually bait there. If you look at my hand, I've got Natural Order. And I'm just looking to resolve that, so kind of punished. And this is quite bad here. Heritage Druid being traded in. And almost nothing here is going to get the job done. We'll see if Brian can find the burn. And there's a Snapcaster for the last piece of burn. And Wizards finding a way there. Force of Will in hand. That is going to stop the Natural Order that was being set on the whole time. So burn, Wizards, and Counter Magic teaming up. Is this a potential force in this post-ban meta? Let me know what you think in the comments. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please help grow the channel by subscribing. You'll be notified when we upload new videos like Fast Effect, Double Speed Magic with commentary, or Untapped, our raw tournament gameplay. Thanks for watching.